Hi there, welcome to Coding Monk. In this video, we are going to build real-world modern chat app. You will be able to learn how to build modern web applications, and this is going to be the best chat app that you can find anywhere on YouTube. We will be covering both front-end and back-end aspects of this application. And at the end of the series, I am also going to show you how to deploy this on AWS and share it with your friends or showcase on your portfolio. As you can see, this is the chat app that we are going to be building in this video. You can switch between different tabs and we are going to build various features like chat, group, calling, settings, and the UI will update itself accordingly, right? And you can click on any of the conversation and it will load up right here. You can even view the contact information of the person and it will display a UI like this. And one of the coolest feature is that you can switch between light and dark mode, and adding to that you can switch between different presets that we have defined. Okay, and you can even switch to full screen mode, and this is going to give you an app like experience. And you can even switch between left to right and right to left direction. This will be useful when we provide an option for different languages. This is the overview of the app that we are going to be covering in this video. There are going to be other parts in which we will be covering various features like groups, calling, settings. Okay, now let's talk about the technology that we are going to be using to build this application. It will consist of React version 18, MUI version 5, Redux, Node, Express, MongoDB, and Socket.io. So, enough with the introduction. I hope you are as excited as I am to start building this app. So, let's get started right away. I have already prepared the starter repo for building this application, and I will be putting the link for it in the description down below. So, let's just clone it on our local computer and start working on this application. Let me show you the process step by step. So first of all, I am going to open terminal on my Mac. If you are working on Windows, then you can do it using PowerShell. Then I'm going to navigate to my working directory. So I'm just going to work on my desktop. Then I'm going to write git clone, and as it's a public repo, you don't need any credentials. I'm just going to paste the link to my repo. Then it will clone the repo on our desktop, as you can see right here. Then we just need to navigate inside this directory, chat app. Then I'm going to open it on my code editor. So after you have cloned the repo, we need to install the npm packages. So we are going to be using a couple of different packages to build this application. So I'm going to run here npm i. You can simply run npm i on your terminal. So after you have installed all the packages, it's now time to run this application. So we just need to write npm run start at the terminal, and this is going to start the development server. So after this application has been started, you will be able to see something like this. It will be auto directed to /app route, and you will be able to see something like dashboard layout and here app. So let's now talk about the initial setup that I have done already for you. As you can see, I have already created few folders here. One of them is theme. This is for the light and dark theme that we are going to be using in our application, and also for defining the color palette, types of shadows, typography, and breakpoints for our application. So here I have constructed our palette as per MUI guidelines, since we are going to be using MUI version 5 to build this application. Don't worry about the code that I have written here. I'm going to be explaining this in a separate series dedicated just for MUI. For now, you can just think of it like an object from which we can access different colors, right? And just like that, we also have different types of shadows defined as per our theme. And same goes for the typography, different types of text that we are going to be using throughout our application. I have already done the task of defining different properties so that we don't have to write repetitive code. Okay, and here are our breakpoints. Okay, for making our application responsive. Then I've just created the theme setup here, and this is the theme provider that we have built, and we are going to be using this inside of our app to make our whole application theme aware. In the similar way, I've created some utility functions for you. Okay, and I've set it up the routing that's needed. So we just need to define some paths and set up the element that we want to render, and I'm going to be explaining you how all of this is working, right? And similarly, I have defined some paths such as this slash app path that we are viewing right now. Okay, and the rest of this application just consists of hooks. These are some custom hooks that I have created that will be useful in this application, right? And there is some dummy data that we are going to be using in the initial parts of this application when we are just building on UI part. And here is also a context that I have created to maintain the theme, okay, to switch between light and dark theme. And then there is an asset folder. It is basically having a chat SVG that we are going to be using and a logo for our application. Then there is a components folder which is going to be consisting of few components that we'll be using throughout this application. And then there is just this our app in which we have just you know wrapped our whole app with theme provider and theme settings, and it contains the router. So router defines the various paths that we can visit inside of our application and what elements needs to be rendered on each of them. And then we just mounted this app. So this is just the trivial setup that we do every time we create a React. In the first part of this application, we are going to be creating different pages, and then we are also going to be working on the layout. Layout basically consists of the header and footer thing, which is constant in various pages, right? So let's now shift our attention to the design that we have to build in this tutorial. So this is the Figma file that I'm going to be sharing with all of you, and you can find the link to this Figma design down in the description. So our first task is to build this page. As you can see, this sidebar is constant in all of the pages, different pages that will be rendered inside of our application. So this is the part of the layout. Layout consists of the parts that are similar between different pages. Only this content is going to differ, right? So let's start by making our very first page. Let's now begin understanding how the routing system is actually working. Then only we will be able to create layout and pages in our application. So for that, we need to understand what is this code all about. I know this might be mysterious, but let us start from the very beginning. So first, we need to understand what is suspense and lazy and what is their role in here. So we want to display something like loading until our complete page is loaded onto the screen. So for that purpose, we use a React component which is coming straight from the React library known as suspense. So what does suspense do? It is going to display a component when it's loaded. Until then, it's going to display a fallback component. It can be some component like a loader, or it can also be a string like loading, right? But in order for suspense to work, it has to be dynamic loading. That means we need to use this lazy function which is also provided by the React library. So we need to import our components like this using this lazy function. Okay, so what we are doing here, we have created a higher order component and we have labeled it as loadable. We are going to pass our components into this, and it will wrap the components with suspense. Let me explain this through an example. So what we are going to do, as you can see, currently we are seeing this app which is a string, right? So we are just seeing this text because of this general app component. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to illustrate you how suspense and lazy work together. So let's first start by importing them. Okay, so after I have imported this, I'm going to use the suspense component here like this. Then I'm going to pass the fallback prop, and I'm just going to pass a string here. You can also pass a component, right? And in here we need to pass something which is a little bit delayed. Unless that is loaded completely, we want to display this loading string onto the screen. Okay, so here I'm going to use this cat component, and this will simply display a cat avatar. And for that I'm going to be importing my cat component here. Const cat is equal to, then I'll call the lazy function. Okay, and this lazy function is going to accept a callback, and it is going to return the result of this import. Here we are going to provide the path for our cat component, so I'm going to be making it inside the components directory. So let me just write cat here. Then we are going to go into the components folder, then we'll create a file called cat.js. Okay, then I'm just going to create a functional component here, and I'm using this extension for writing this boilerplate. Okay, so here I'm just going to use avatar component. If you don't know how this is working, this avatar component from material UI, then no need to sweat it. I'm just going to explain it to you very soon. Okay, so we just need to import it from the material UI library. Then we need to provide a source. Okay, I have already gotten this image from pexels.com. Okay, so I've just imported it here. Right now we are loading this cat component through lazy function which is provided by React. So this is the dynamic loading. That means this component cat is going to take some amount of time to load this image. Okay, so this is a dynamic import, and now we are wrapping it inside of suspense, and it's accepting fallback as loading, which is a string. So what is going to happen now, we are going to see this avatar with a cat image, and until unless this is loaded, we are going to see loading. Now as I reload this page, just before this cat image is displayed, we are going to see loading on our screen. Okay, so this is because of this suspense component. So I hope this cleared the concept of suspense and lazy. So let's now get back to the routing that we were exploring. Okay, so I think this is now clear, and this is just an HOC, higher order component, which is going to accept a component. Okay, and then it is going to wrap the component inside of the suspense, and suspense is accepting loading screen, which is actually just a component which is going to display this loading text onto the screen. Okay, so we are going to use loadable like this to get our components or pages, and then we are going to use it inside of this use routes to create different paths for them, and then render these components onto our screen. So let's now understand what this block of code is actually doing. It is defining a path in our application which is starting from slash. So what is going to happen whenever we are visiting something like slash and then anything, let's say app, then React is going to say that this path is matching, then it has an element as a component, and then it has several children. Then this path app is actually matching. So what it will do, it is going to render this general app component, and all of these children's will be wrapped inside the parent element. So this is actually going to act as a layout or a wrapper which will be wrapped around any component that will be rendering in this block. Okay, so this is how routing is working in this application, and this is the fallback that we have set it up. Like if someone is visiting any page except all of the pages that are mentioned above this, then it is going to be navigated to page 404, and on page 404 we are going to display this component page 404, which is just going to say that you have visited a page that is no longer present in this application. Okay, or not found. So I hope this clears how the routing system is actually working in this application. Let's now understand what is the purpose of this other file in our routes folder, paths.js. This is basically defining some constants that we can access very easily in anywhere inside our application. So let's say we want to navigate to slash login page in our application or slash app. Okay, then what we are going to do, we will be writing something like router.push or link to. These are some of the ways in which we can navigate to different pages inside React. We need to specify a path where we want to navigate. In that case, we would have to write slash app if we just want to go to the app page. And this is actually not a good practice because we can make some mistake. Like I can write something like API instead of app. Okay, so to prevent that, we are just going to access it like this. We would be importing path dashboard, okay, inside our file. Then we would write path dashboard dot general dot app. So this is actually going to give me the access to this. And what this path function is actually doing, it is just taking something root and one thing known as sublink, and it's just combining those and returning a string. The result of this expression is going to be slash app. So instead of hard coding slash app, I can just write this statement. And one of the main benefits of doing things like this is going to be, if I change this from app to, let's say, general app, then I don't have to go at all the places in my application where I have navigated to this page. It will be automatically done since I am using this expression. Okay, so I hope it clears the concept of routing, how we are doing it inside our application. We are now going to create this sidebar. As you can see, this is common in mostly all of the pages. So this is going to be a part of the layout, and hence we have used it inside our route. As you can see, we have defined the element, that means the parent of all these childrens, as dashboard layout. So dashboard layout is basically a component which is defined inside this layouts folder. Inside this dashboard directory, we have an index.js file. So this is basically having some code which is going to be common in all of the pages, that is this sidebar. And this outlet is basically acting as a placeholder for all of its children. That means when we request this page slash app, then we are going to see general app rendered onto the screen, which is going to be wrapped inside of dashboard layout. So what is actually going to happen, all of the code that will be written here will be rendered, and along with that, all of the general app code will also be rendered just besides this in place of this outlet. So let's now begin actually making the component that we want to display onto the screen. So as you can see, this is just a box. Okay, so we are going to be using material UI in this project. So I'm going to use box component, which is built right inside the material UI package. This is basically going to act like a div in HTML, right? So let me also give you an idea about what box is going to do for us. So we are just going to visit mui.com, and then I'm going to search box component. So as you can see how we can use box in all the code snippets that is given here. So box is just a container or a div in which we can pass some styling via this asx prop. Okay, asx prop can be used to pass styles in all of the MUI components. So we can use it in different ways, like wrapping a button and giving this box a border to make this type of component. In our use case, we are just going to give it a background color. So here I'm going to give it a background color of black just to demonstrate it. Okay, and now this is not going to be sufficient because this box doesn't have any height or width, so we have to also define that. So I'm going to give it 100 vh height, okay, full height of the viewport, and width I'm going to give it 100 here means 100 pixel. You can see a box, black box here. This is rendering because of this box component, and we are using it via material UI. Okay, and in our case we want it to be of this color, right? And this is actually going to come from theme. So let me also tell you how we can access theme inside of any of our component in this project. So we just need to use this use theme, which is built right into material UI. So we have to import this from @mui/material/styles. Okay, now let me show it to you by logging it into the console. What are all the things that is contained inside this theme? So let me open up my console here. As you can see, here is an object. So it contains various things like breakpoints, components. What we really need here is palette. You can see it has lots of different colors defined inside it, and one of the properties it contains is background, and it has three different things: default, neutral, and paper color. So this is going to change according to the mode of this theme. Okay, like in light mode it is going to be white, and in dark mode it is going to be somewhat black. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to be removing this black hard-coded value and providing it theme.palette.background.paper. Okay, so this is actually coming from the theme. As you can see here, we have theme, then palette. Inside that we have a background, and in background we have this paper component. Okay, this is rendering here in white color, that's why it's not visible right now, but we also have to provide it a box shadow. Okay, so this is the box shadow from our Figma file, and if we apply it, you can see a very thin border here, right? This is because of the box shadow. So we have successfully created this sidebar here. Now we need to also create these components inside of it. So to put this type of logo, we have to first create a box, and inside that we are going to render an image. For that purpose, I am going to again use a box component here. Okay, then again I am going to give it some styling using this asx prop, which is just like using the style prop. Okay, then I can just assign it a background color. Okay, so in this case I want my background color to be the primary color of my theme. So I will just write theme.palette.primary dot main. Okay, so this is again coming from our theme. uh, Now we have to also give it some height and width, so I'm going to give it height of 64 and a width of 64. Now you can see this blue box here, right? And we also need to provide it a border radius. Let's see the exact radius in our Figma file that we need to provide. So when I double click on this box and go to inspect, then I can see border radius is written as 12 pixel. So I'm going to be writing here 2.5. So if I am writing any numerical value for this border radius property, then it will be multiplied by 8, and 8 is basically the default spacing in Material UI. Okay, so we have to give it a border radius of 12 divided by 8, that means 1.5, and then we can render an image inside of it. So I'm just going to write an image tag, and then I'm going to provide it some source. So to render that image, first we have to import it in this file. So I'm going to import my logo from. I need to move into the assets folder. After this, I'm going to go inside the images, and there I can find logo.ico. So I'm going to write just that. Okay, now you can see we have imported our logo, and we just need to use it here. Okay, it's perfect. Now we can also provide alt attribute, and I'm just going to write here chat app logo. Okay, one thing is that we need to also center this and provide it some spacing from top and left, right. So for that purpose, what we are actually going to do, we are going to wrap all of this box children inside a stack. So what is actually stack? Let me explain it to you here on Material UI. Stack is basically a component which is using flex properties, right? We can align certain things in row or in column as well. Okay, and as you can see here, we can align things in rows or columns. We can also set the align items property, justify content property. Okay, and we can even change the spacing between these items. Okay, so that's why we are going to group all of this boxes children inside a stack, and it will be imported right from the Material UI library. Then we need to provide direction prop, and since we are going to be aligning all of these things in a column, so I'm going to provide direction as column. Okay, then let's see what we get here. Okay, so one thing that we need to do is we need to tell stack that it has to take 100% of the width that is available to it. So we also need to write like sx and then width 100%. Okay, and now we also need to provide this prop align items center. Now you can see that this logo is nicely centered horizontally, right? Now to give it some padding from top and bottom, we are going to give padding to the box element that we have used. So I'm going to give it a padding of 2. 2 means 2 multiplied by 8. That means 16 pixels. Now it's looking good. Let's now talk about how we can build this tab. Okay. So what we are going to do, we have a list of all these icons that we want to render here. Let me show it to you. In this file, I have created nav buttons in advance for you. So as you can see, we have different icons, and we also have index so that we can provide a key value. Okay. because whenever we are rendering a list in React, we need to provide a key so that it will be optimized. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say nav buttons, and it will be imported from a data folder that we have index.js. Okay, so we have imported all these icons from there. Then I'm going to just map over these icons and then render a component which is coming again from material UI, and its name is icon button. It's going to allow us to click on these icons. Okay, inside this we can just render our icon. So I can write el dot and then I can select icon, and here I'm going to provide key which will be el dot index. Okay, so as you can see, we have got these buttons and these are clickable. Now what we want to do is we want to separate them just a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put all of these buttons inside a stack. So using a stack, we will be able to group them and align them vertically and provide them some spacing. A stack is again going to come from material UI. Then I can just provide a prop here, a spacing which is available in stack. I'm going to give a value of 2 and you can see that the spacing has increased. So let's give a spacing of 3. So 3 here means 3 times 8 pixels, that means 24 pixels, and this looks good. Now what we are going to do, we also need some separation between this logo box and these icons. So what I'm going to do, I will also provide spacing to this stack, which is the parent of this box and this stack, right? So I'm going to provide a spacing of 3, that means 24 pixels. And now this is looking really nice. Also we need this divider, and then we also need a gear icon for settings. Then we are going to focus on how to select different tabs and also make this selected tab background blue and the icon white. Okay, so let me just put here divider. Divider is again a component from material UI. Let me show it to you. So I'm just going to pull up mui.com and then we can search divider here. Now as you can see, what this divider does is it's working like HR element in HTML. Okay, it provides this horizontal line. Also you can make it vertical and it has several props. And how to know what different props we can pass, you can just go to the API which is always available down at the documentation of each and every component in material UI. Then you can click under the API on this component and you will be able to see different props that it's going to accept. Now as you can see, it has various props. Okay, and there is also one prop known as orientation, in which you can pass either horizontal or vertical, and it will be a horizontal line or vertical line accordingly, and the default value is just horizontal. Okay, so that's why we have used divider here. Okay, now we can just move it inside the stack. Now after moving this divider inside the stack, you can see that this divider is visible here, right? Let's now also render the settings icon here. So for that I'm just going to write here again icon button. Okay, and then inside this I'm going to import this gear icon. Okay, and this gear icon is going to come from React library, which is just a icons library that we are using in this project. So let me show it to you. Okay, so this is the library that we are using for icons in our project. So you can see this gear icon is basically what we need. Okay, and in React we need to write it like this, and it needs to be imported from React library, and that's what we are going to do here. So we have imported it, this gear icon, from React, and we have already installed this package when we were setting up our repo. Okay, so let's save this and see what we get on our screen. Okay, now it's visible perfectly. Okay, so let's now also style these buttons and make it clickable just like here. Okay, so for that, first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to provide some styling to this stack. Okay, I'm going to give its width as max content, then direction column, which is by default here, but I'm just going to give it anyway so that you can see directly that its direction is column. And align items, I'm going to say center because I want all of these children of this stack, that means all of the buttons to be properly aligned vertically, okay, at the center. And we have already provided this spacing. Let's save this. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to maintain a state here to know which button is currently selected. Okay, so for that I'm just going to say selected and set selected. Okay, then we will write use state. We are initializing it with 0, that means this button with index 0 will be the selected button by default when this page is first rendered onto the screen. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to render two different types of button. One will be a simple icon button and the other one will be wrapped inside a box. Okay, so let me create it right here. So we are going to take a box. Okay, it's a component from material UI again. Then we need to put this icon button inside this box, and then we just need to provide some styling to this box. First property that I'm going to give it is background color, and we are going to give it primary main color. Okay, so theme dot palette dot primary dot main. Okay, now we also need to provide some border radius, so I'm going to write border radius, and again it will be multiplied by 8. Okay, so I'm giving it 1.5 because I need a border radius of 12, as you can see here, or in the inspect tab you can see border radius of 12 pixels. So that's why I've given border radius of 1.5, that means 12, and now it's looking nice. And the next thing that we need to do is we also need to style our icon button. So I'm going to give it some properties, css properties. First one will be width, that is going to be max content, and then color, which is going to be white. Okay, we don't want all of our buttons to be selected at once. Let's now implement the logic to show this blue background only on the selected button. We'll have to come here inside of our map, then we are going to write a condition. We are going to say if this elements index is equal to the selected index which we have maintained inside of the use state, then we are going to render this component. Otherwise we are just going to render the icon button, and that too with a background color of black. Okay, so I'm going to give it 000. We also need to write on click here, because when we are going to click on any of these buttons, then we want this blue background to shift from this button to this button. Okay, so for that we are going to say on click. What we are going to do here, we are going to call this set selected, and then we will set the selected value to the current index value. Okay, the index of the current icon that is being rendered. Let's see what this does. Now if I click on these different buttons, then I'm able to select those, and we need to do the same for this gear icon because this is not the part of the list, so it is not getting all of these things by default. And before that, we also need to provide a defined width to our divider. So let's provide a width of 48 pixels. Okay, so I'm going to just provide a width of 48 pixel, and now it's looking good. Let's now also do the same thing for this gear icon. So we will need to write a condition here, and this will be if the selected index, if selected index is equal to 3, because the index for the other buttons is from 0 to 2, so the index for this gear icon is going to be 3. Okay, then I'm going to write, if this condition is true, then we need to render this box. Okay, this blue box, and inside that we are going to render our icon button. Otherwise, if this condition is not true, then we just need to render this gear icon button simply. Okay, one thing that we need to do here is we also need to implement this logic of on click. If the button is clicked, then right now nothing is going to happen. If this button is clicked, then we want to update the selected index to value 3. Okay, and this is going to do the job for us. Okay, so it's now working. One thing that we need to do is we need to provide an icon color of white. Okay, so let's make it white. Now it's looking good. Okay, let's also make the styling uniform. So also in this unselected button we have defined its color as black. Now we are heading close to our design. So now we need to render this avatar component and this switch component at the bottom of this sidebar. So let's start by creating the avatar component, and it's going to be imported from material UI. Then just we need to pass the source component, source of the image that we want to render, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a package called faker, and let me show you. Faker is actually very useful because it contains lots of fake data that we can use while building our UI part of the application. So what we need to really do is we just need to install this package, and then we can start working with it. Okay, so as you can see, we just need to write this statement at the top of our file in which we want to use this faker library. Then I can just access it anywhere like this. Okay, faker dot, you can see that it has lots of fake data. I just need image, and inside image I just specifically need avatar. Okay, and we also need to call this because this is a method. Okay, so let me save this, and here you can see that we have a avatar image, and whenever this component will be re-rendered, then this image will be fetched again. Okay, so it will change. Now we have one issue, we want to place it at the bottom. So what we are going to do, we will be wrapping this avatar inside a stack. Okay, so we will be putting it inside a stack, and now you can see, let me format it. You can see that this is one single component. You can visualize it like one component. Okay, then also there is this component stack. Okay, so this is basically containing these list this list of icon buttons, and then there is also this box. Okay, now we are going to group this stack and this box together, and for that we are going to wrap these two components inside a stack. Okay, so let me just grab all of this till here, then I'm just going to move it inside this stack. Okay, now here we just need to write one single property, and that is align items center. This is to make all of these children's, okay, this logo and all of these icon buttons to align properly vertically. Now we have done this thing here, we can also do like spacing, because there is no space between these icon buttons and logo, so we are providing some spacing. I'll give it a value of 4, that means 4 times 8, 32 pixels. Now what I can do here is, since this stack is going to contain this avatar plus the switch that we are going to implement here in a bit, so we just need to specify justify content space between, and that is going to provide the separation that is needed between the upper and the bottom portion. For this to work, we also need to provide it a height of 100%. Okay, so now you can see that this upper portion and the bottom portion is nicely aligned and separated. Now there is only one thing left to implement in the sidebar, and that is switch. So to implement this, we are going to use a component from Material UI library, and that is known as switch. As you can see, Material UI has lots of different switches to offer. So let's just pick the simplest one for now and implement it here. So I have just copied the code snippet that is available inside the Material UI documentation, and then we are just going to import this switch. Okay, this switch component from Material UI. I have saved this. Let's now see what change it brings. Okay, so now you can see this switch button down at the bottom. Okay, what we are going to do, we are going to first provide some spacing between this avatar component and this switch. So for that, I'm going to give it a spacing of 4. Okay, and now these are nicely separated, but there is one issue. We have a slightly different switch inside our design. So how are we going to make this switch into this kind of switch? Obviously we need to change its styling. So for that, I'm going to show you after inspecting what classes it actually contains. So as you can see, it's just an input button. Okay, and it has several classes separately for this thumb and this track on which this thumb is moving. So we are just going to customize those, and you can see an example of that inside the Material UI library itself. Here you can see this button, and this is looking very closely like our design. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are just going to take it from here, and let me also explain how they have customized this button. So this is known as a style component. Okay, so we are going to take our normal switch component, then we are going to pass it inside style. Style is basically a higher order function which is available inside the Material UI library. I'm going to show you this inside our code in just a bit. Then we need to call another function. Okay, and then we can destructure the theme, and we can actually return an object which is going to contain all the CSS that we want to implement on the switch. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. So let's just copy this for now. So I have grabbed this code, okay, for end switch from Material UI. Now we are going to paste it at the top of our file. Later on we are going to move this into a separate component. Okay, now we just need to import this style from Material UI. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write it here because it's coming from @mui/material/styles. Okay, so we have imported style. Now we have passed the switch that is also imported from Material UI inside this style. Then we got this theme. Okay, and accordingly we have some styling written here, and this is just the SAS syntax. If you don't know it yet, then it's just accessing the nested classes and applying some properties to it. Okay, now what we can do, we can use this AND switch in place of the normal switch that we have used currently in our code, just like this, and let's see what difference it makes. Now it's looking good. We need to customize its size. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to increase the width to 40 and height to 20. Let's see how this looks now. Okay, so now we have made some changes, and we also need to change some other properties in here. So we need to make some changes to this track. We need to increase its border radius, and also we need to make some changes to this thumb. Okay, so let's get to this classes MUI switch thumb and MUI switch track. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make its width to 16 and height to 16. Okay, and then we are going to make the border radius half of height and width, so I'm going to put 8 here, so it will look like a circle just like this. Okay, and then we are going to make some changes to the track. So I'm going to change its border radius to 20 by 2, that is 10. Okay, let's see how this looks, and now it's looking pretty good. One last thing that we need to do is that this thumb is not moving properly to the right. Okay, so for that we need to customize this class MUI switch base. Here you can see if it's checked, okay, then this class will apply to this switch MUI checked. So this property is actually controlling how much this switch or this thumb is actually going to move in the x direction. So currently it's 12 and we are going to make it 20. Okay, let's now see. Yeah, it's looking nice. So congratulations, we have just learned how to use the style component and do some complex stuff just like this, okay, using Material UI. And this is actually the feature that I like most about Material UI because it's much flexible. Now we can also do one more cool thing here, turn the theme from light to dark and dark to light when I toggle this switch. So how are we going to achieve that? For that, I have to explain you this context that I have already created for you. So in this context, we have some methods defined, okay, and one of them is on toggle mode. So on toggle mode, what it basically does, let me show it to you here. It is going to change our theme mode, okay. If the current theme mode is light, then it is going to make it dark or vice versa. Okay, so we are just going to get this on toggle mode from our context, and then we are going to use it on this button, okay, whenever this is clicked. So I'm going to call on change here, then we just need to pass it a callback, and inside this callback I'm going to use on toggle mode. And how are we going to get this on toggle mode? Well, we have something known as settings context. Okay, so we are going to access it here in this component just before return. So I'm going to write const on toggle mode, and this is going to come from use settings. Okay, so use settings is basically a custom hook that I have prepared, and it is just going to give us access to all the methods and properties that are defined inside of this settings context. So we need to import this at the top of our file. So I'm just going to write here import use settings from. I'm going to go inside the hooks folder, and then there I can get this use settings. Okay, so now I have access to this on toggle mode method, which is basically the method that we need to call when we want to switch our theme. So I'm just going to place it here inside this end switch. Whenever we toggle the switch, then we are going to call this method, and then this is going to change the theme. Okay, so let's see if it's working or not. Yeah, it's working. And this is so cool because we have completely implemented this sidebar, and we are also able to change the theme of our app. Now there is last one thing that I want to do, and this is I want to change the icon color when the theme is dark. Okay, so what we are going to do, we only want to change the color of this inactive tab. Okay, and inside of our code this is the inactive tab, which is not wrapped inside the box. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to place a condition on this color. Okay, here and also here similar condition will be placed. So let's see what this condition is going to be. So we are going to say if theme dot palette dot mode. Okay, so our theme palette contains the mode, current mode, light or dark. So we are going to check if the current mode is light, then we are going to use this color. Otherwise we are going to be using white color, and it is, we can access that color by writing this theme.palette.text.primary. Okay, and this same condition is going to be used in this list as well. Okay, here, so I'm just going to write it. So let's see, and this is pretty nice. So I hope you enjoyed watching this, how we have set it up our code base, and then we learned also about the structure of our repo, and then we also learned a little bit about MUI and how to do the routing. So if you are excited about this, then make sure to subscribe and like this video, and also share it with your friends. In the next part, we are going to be covering how to build this chats or conversation list. Okay, so we will be building this part in our next video. So make sure to subscribe this channel to get the latest updates. Thanks for watching. See you next time.